Hello everybody, Mannix here. Got yet another tabletop knife review for you right here, right now. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss any weekly knife, gear, flashlight, lighter, gun, ammunition videos. Support me on Patreon if you wish. Link in the description, every penny counts. Let's get right into this. This is on one of my favorite knives ever. The CRKT Otanashi Noh Ken, which translates roughly to Saber of Silence? Sword of Silence, something like that. It's a really cool name. It's a really cool knife. Very functional knife. Lot of reach right here. Very good lock. Really, really cool, slick, sexy, stylish knife overall. It's just a little bit expensive for the materials you're getting. I'll just throw it right out there, right on the table right now. Let's get the specs out of the way. Blade length is 4.52 inches. Yes, you heard that right. It's a very long blade. 4 inches I already consider a long blade. This is 4.5. Overall length being 10.13 inches, and reading this a little bit out of order, handle length is 5.61 inches according to their specs. G10 handle scale, stainless steel frame lock on the other side. We do have a LAWKS mechanism right there, which assists in locking the lock. If you're not familiar with that, I'll talk about that more in depth in just a minute here. Tip up, carry only. It appears to be swappable to the left side, although it is a lopsided knife because it is a frame lock. It's just kind of how that works, unfortunately. Loop over pocket clip. Very slick, sweet pocket clip right there. It's just held together with that one screw. And it's flushly, if you will, mounted in between the rest of the knives, the butt of the handle right there, so it's not going to wiggle out of place. You don't have to worry about that. Lanyard hole right there. I forget what they call the finish on the steel. I'm assuming they use the same finish on both the handle and the blade right there. But it looks and feels just like a Ti-Ni or titanium nitride coating. Very good overall coating right there. Not too expensive to work with or put on there. And it's relatively durable. Eventually it'll start scratching on you, but I've had this for a while and used it occasionally. I haven't had too many issues with scratching or anything like that. Nothing obvious wore on it yet. It's a mid-grade coating, I would call it. AUS 8 blade steel. Thumb disc right here. And here comes the one issue everybody's probably going to have with this knife. The MSRP on this is $150. Across the board, most shops, you can get this anywhere from around, I want to say about the $100 range from most shops. On Amazon, the absolute cheapest place I found this for was for $80, I believe. So $80 for 4.5 inches of a skinny, relatively slim, 4.5 inch, albeit, AUS 8A blade, and it's a frame lock. You know, that's a little expensive. Even for $80, it's slightly expensive. But again, for most stores, when they charge you closer to $100, if not more sometimes, it's a little expensive. I'm not going to lie. It's not a cheap knife by any means, mainly considering its blade steel right here. If it was a VG10 blade or something like that, yeah, maybe I could see it being just a little bit more justified at that price. But AUS 8 for that, I'm going to say is just a little bit much for that price. I don't consider myself a steel snob. I don't really care that much about blade steel. I do care about it, but I'm more about the heat treatment, how reputable the company is, how well they did the blade as a whole with the steel. Not so much what the steel is itself. You'll hear so many different kinds of things on blade steels. What's better, what's worse, what's worth it, etc. But I do know for a fact AUS 8 is on a lot of different knives for much cheaper that are similar in the sheer amount of materials they use. They won't be this length. Again, don't get me wrong, it's a very, very, very long frame lock knife. It's really cool, it's really stylish, very effective actually overall. But just looking at the amount of materials we have here and the blade steel and the fact that it is not made in the US, it's going to throw a lot of people off. A lot of people are going to shy away from this knife. If this were like $65 across the board, $70, oh yeah, total home run. Anything more than that, it's starting to get a little expensive. That being said, I still pulled the trigger on it when I found a good sale come up. I can't remember exactly what I spent. I want to say it was maybe like 77, maybe 80. I think it was an Amazon sale about half a year ago or so. Finally, I just pulled the trigger on it, and I absolutely love it. Just getting that out of the way, not to take anything away from this knife, it is an absolutely beautiful, functional folder. Just throwing that on the table right now, right here. It's not cheap for the blade steel you are getting. That's it. Everything else about this knife is absolutely sound. It's absolutely one of my favorite knives ever. Oh yeah, weighs 6.2 ounces according to their website. If you did not run away yet, and you're still interested in this knife, let's get into the review. So again, the big thing this knife has going for it is looking like a traditional tanto. This is what many would argue is the original or traditional tanto style blade. It's not quite as abrupt as the Americanized tanto. We have sort of two edges right here. If you look very, very closely, it looks like they started a new edge. It's not just a simple belly. It looks like a separate edge was grinded right there on the blade. But it's a lot more gradual, and it starts a lot lower on the blade than it would on the Americanized or modernized tanto that we're all probably more used to. I love this blade. It is a pretty good slicer. There's not a whole lot of belly here. In most blades, you'll have more of the belly right up here. I'll show you what I mean in just a minute. But it is absolutely still a very functional blade. So you do have enough belly. It's going to be very good for piercing, not quite as strong as an Americanized tanto. But it is still going to be good because it's very thin right there. And we have a relatively thick blade too. I really, really like the geometry on this blade right here. As you can see where the spine is. Really cool. Kind of a miss. Looks like the attention to detail. The coating they put on here was just a little off at the tip. Maybe I took it off myself, but I don't remember doing too hard work with this. I don't think I stabbed very much, and that looks very precise. I think that's a manufacturing miss. I don't know if all of them are that way. Maybe it's just mine that's that way. Somewhat of an attention to detail miss on the tip for the coating right there. It's very flat, very squared off. I actually really like that about this knife. It's very stylish, very slim. Decent side traction. I'd say medium to actually higher traction on this G10 pattern right here, as you can see. I like the three lions they have right here. It's just an aesthetic thing. It's cool, I think. I like the jimping they have right here on the spine. It's not up here like it normally would be. It's still a little bit lower, right where my thumb lands when I hold it normally. I actually like that. I like having 0.75 inches of extra length before the edge begins. I kind of like that. It makes even more use out of the reach of the knife. I like this choil right here. I like how it's rounded right there, so your thumb can get to that thumb disc just a little bit easier. Very easy to get to the thumb disc. Thumb discs are not my bag. I prefer thumb studs, and even more so, I prefer the thumb holes. But for this style knife, they didn't have a whole lot of room for a stud. Forget a hole. That hole would not work very well with this knife just because the blade's so concealed under the handle, and I love that too, aesthetically. However, I kind of see why they went with a disc. Not a huge fan of them. It's not a big deal. I can still open it pretty much as easily as a stud. I really don't care that much. Flicks out every single time, opens up conventionally every single time. It's just not my preference, but it is what it is. No issues there. It is textured on the edges. I have no problems with it, and for whatever reason, if you want to, you could take that off. Flicks out with no wrist movement, although you do have to be a bit purposeful with how you flick it. If you just try to go willy-nilly, you might slip a little bit. It's not the most textured disc in the world. A disc in general, again, you don't have as much to grip onto in comparison to studs, so you just got to be just a little bit more purposeful with it. It's not a big deal, but it is fast for this, again, 4.5-inch long blade. Beautiful, beautiful. Lot of reach right here. Very extra large length knife. It's a little bit skinnier than most knives, a little bit more slim than most knives in this size overall, but it is longer. It's kind of like you stretched out a knife like that. Frame lock. I like the texturing they have right here. Very, very wide cutouts right there. It looks very good, I think. It's very easy to get to. Really digs into your thumb. No issues there. So deployment and closing the knife, manipulating the blade, pivoting it around is an A. I would give it. Not an A+, just because that thumb disc is slightly slippery in comparison to what else is out there. But everything else, it's very good. And then on top of that, we have the LAWKS system. It's pretty much just a separate piece of steel right there that swivels, that pivots, and you can choose to use it or not. It's not a big deal. But if you choose to use it with this little lever they have right here, it will obstruct the frame lock, so you will not be able to close it. You hear it moving, there's a little bit of wiggle room there, but you cannot close it with that obstruction in the way till you clear it. I do also like how it is manual. There's no spring in here. So if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. You can just leave it alone. Some people don't like the auto locks, which is the locks that automatically springs forward with the spring. To each their own, but this one does not have the spring, so you don't have to use it if you don't want to. You can actually even rub your thumb over the spine without engaging it. It's a very unique design. You do have to kind of pinch your thumb in just a little bit in order to engage that. I think that's a good thing, so you don't accidentally engage it when you're not trying to. But even then, your thumb naturally does not rest right there because it's on this little jimped section. The G10 and the steel right here is different, so they went with slightly different patterns, but they matched up as best they could. It still has a lot of texture, still very good. But my thumb, again, naturally lands right there when I grip this, even in a saber grip. You can choke up on it, try to move your thumb up here. That's where this is going to come in the way, and then you can even do that if you'd like. It's a little bit obtrusive if you do engage it because your thumb will touch that. But again, if you rest it down here, that's not a big deal. So frame locks are already pretty strong because not only is this pretty thick, but with the frame lock, as you know, your grip itself helps enforce the lock. But now we have a lock on top of that. So it's extra safe. Very, very strong locking mechanism overall because we have 2 locks right here especially. Then we have the continuity of the design right here. We have the 3 lines on the steel. That's pretty cool. Nice attention to detail. I like it when knives kind of reflect themselves. Absolutely love this pocket clip. Here's another hit in the knife. I really, really like this pocket clip. It's so simple. I usually talk about my videos. I like how the pocket clips plateau and then pinch down. This one does not do that, but I'm going to forgive it because they executed this so well. The tensions is perfect. It's on slick stainless steel as a surface, so it just slips in and out of your pocket. It is a dream. It's not too loose. It's just absolute perfection. It's loop over. It's blackened. It's a great pocket clip. I absolutely love it. There's nothing weird or goofy about it. It's not too tight, not too loose. Perfection. Perfect pocket clip right here. Absolutely love it. It is a dream extracting this and inserting it back into your pocket. The combination of how everything is set up, how slim it is, how slick this portion of the knife is, with the overall design of the pocket clip, it's perfection. I love it. There is no IKBS on this knife. They probably did have it at the time they made the knife, but this is back when CRKT was not putting it on all of their knives. Not that they put it on literally all their knives today, but most of them they do. Kind of wish it did have it, but it's still smooth enough. It's fine. You're not really missing much on this knife the way they executed it. Big ol' stop pin right there. Perfect lockup. There is no up and down. Pretty much no side to side, but even if there was, again, we have a pivot screw right here, so you can adjust that out. Speaking of which, I like how it's flush with the handle. All the hardware here is, well, I was going to say all the hardware, but not these. They're not exactly flush. These bulge out a little bit. But I do like this style of hardware. It's a very, very good looking blade. Beautiful. It's almost symmetrical as far as its handle is concerned. Of course, the blade is not symmetrical, but overall, it's a very symmetrical-ish knife. So it's not the absolutely most comfortable knife in the world because it doesn't have a very extreme design, doesn't have a very ergonomic design, doesn't have a whole lot of choils. But we have our main choil here, and the rest of the knife does fit the human hand okay. It's not great, but it's not bad. It doesn't have any major hot spots or anything like that. So it overall is a very adequate handle as far as its ergonomics are concerned. So good deployment, excellent pocket clip. It is ambidextrous other than the fact that it is a frame lock. Great blade shape. It's a little slim, but it's kind of on the slimness as far as this is concerned. I guess I would call that the width, I would say. We have kind of a stubby width, but we do have a relatively thick blade as far as its girth is concerned. So very good blade. It's very good looking. I like the tie-night coating. Carries like a dream. Very good lockup. You have the auto locks right there. We have good texturing. AUS 8 is good. It's not great for the money. It's just kind of expensive for what they're charging right here. I don't really know why they did that. Not sure what the manufacturing process is exactly, but for the sheer materials alone, you can get more for your money. It's just $20 too expensive, I think, across the board. It's not the end of the world. It's not extremely expensive, but it's, for some people, it might be a deal breaker. You know, for if you're just looking at that blade steel, you just want a knife for function. So for one quick example, a very similar looking knife in some aspects, and from the same company, the CRKT Golf, one of my favorite knives ever as well. We both have G10 handle scales on here, although this is a liner lock. The Otanashi Noh Ken is a frame lock, but it still has steel liners in it. Similar pocket clip, looks quite different, but functionally it's very similar pocket clip. We have a black wash finish on here instead of the tie-night coating. Much thicker, much bigger, heavier knife right here, the Golf, but they both have AUS 8 blade steels. And guess what? The Golf, you can get across the board for maybe $70. These, again, $100. I forget what the retail is for the Golf offhand, but I know it is less than $150. So just materials alone, you can see you're getting actually a lot more material for the Golf right here. Granted, the cutting edge is a little shorter. Yeah, about a half an inch shorter or so. But look how much wider the blade is. You're literally getting more steel on this Golf right here and more handle material. So although the materials are the same on the Golf and you're getting more of them, it's still considerably cheaper than this Otanashi Noh Ken right here. So again, I don't know why they priced it at its price. Granted, you are getting the locks right here. You don't have that on the Golf, but regardless, just another brief example of a little bit expensive. There's better knives. Easily, there are much, much better knives for the money. But if you want these looks, that's just what you're going to have to pay. And on top of that, again, we have a lot of features here that a lot of knives, even in similar price ranges, don't have. And that's just what's so cool about it. So if you like the way this knife looks, you like the longer length of it, I would just buy it. So, you know, fork over the extra $20, $25, whatever it is, and just pick it up because these are really, really cool, I think. And they're probably not going to make them forever because they're not extremely popular, again, for the reasons I mentioned. And again, I love how the blade kind of almost goes flush under the handle. It's just a very simple, very elegant, cool kind of Japanese style folding knife right here. Defense, Yeah, sure. It's not the absolute best defensive option, but it's a good one. The only issue is, again, that thumb plate. I do prefer studs, but again, it's still good enough. You just can pop it out like that. You have that extra lock you can use. Frame locks are strong enough, certainly a little bit better than liner locks, I would argue. And then you look at that reach you have. Good for pierces, good for typical slashes. Can't impact cut very well with this one. You can with the Americanized Tantos, but still overall a good defensive blade option. You're very good for piercing. Again, that's going to be one of your best up bets with this knife, especially because that reach you have too. And there is enough traction on here for me to qualify it as a defensive blade. A stylish one at that too, and very covert. I do like that pocket clip again too. Loop over, it's just, again, love that pocket clip. It's one of the great hits on this knife. So, again, a little bit expensive for the blade steel, I'll give it that, but everything else is just dynamite. Dynamite, not just the looks, but the function. It's just, it's near perfection. Almost a perfect knife. A little bit heavy, too. That's another thing I'll give it. Some people don't like the heavy weights. Yeah, it's slightly heavy because it is a steel frame lock knife. It's just kind of what you have to deal with. In fact, just before I go out, let's weigh this sucker. They're saying it's 6.2 ounces, but CRKT and a lot of other knife manufacturers are not always the most accurate with what their website says as far as the weight is concerned. Okay, my scale is saying 6.36. Yeah, slightly heavier than 6.2. You sneaky devils, CRKT. No, I don't think that was intentional or anything, but interesting. Let's say it's about 6.2, 6.3 ounces. So again, one of my favorite knives ever. I like to carry it when I can. It's a dream to carry this knife. A little bit heavy, but the balance of it, because it's such a long knife, it feels very balanced in the pocket, balanced in the hand. Very good looking. It's just, I have no major complaints about it. One of my favorite knives ever. The CRKT Otanashi Noh Ken. Otanashi Noh Ken. Sounds like something Sephiroth would say. Anyway, thanks for watching.